One of the things I convinced President Ladd when I was vice president, I convinced the president to do, provide money for high-speed rail. And if I say you don't like, don't jump, okay? These are jobs for folks I thought about as I take that train home. You know the park guys, you get outside of Baltimore, just before you get into Baltimore, you can look out the window and you're going through basically the neighborhood. And I always used to sit there, I mean it coming home, and look out and see people sitting at the kitchen tables. Literally, you could see them right along the track. And wondering, what are they thinking about? What's on their minds? When I was vice president, they did an article about Biden had traveled, well, I think it was 1,200,000 miles on aircraft. And they list how many miles you travel all the time. And so I'm getting on the train, and Secret Service are great guys, but they understandably would rather me not ride trains because more things can happen on a train in the distance instead of flying home. But I had to come home and see my mom. She was living with me. She was dying. Anyway, so I go to get in the train on a Friday afternoon, and a guy named Andrew, oh, I guess I shouldn't say his whole name, but he used to be number 2 on the road. And he walked up, he goes, "Joey, baby!" He grabs my cheek. And I thought they were going to shoot him. And I said, "What's the story, Angie?" He said, "I just read 1,200,000 miles. Big deal." He said, "You know how many miles you travel on Amtrak?" And I said, "No, Angie." He said, "We did retirement dinner up in Newark." Said the guys, because most of my team was coming out of New York, you know, and that back and forth. And he said, "You know," he said, "You travel over 1,250,000 miles or 300,000 miles. How'd you figure that, Angie?" He said, "Well, it's about, I forget the exact number, but I think it's 280 miles round trip." And he said the Senate's within an average of 117 days a year. You did it for 36 years, almost every day. And then you did as vice president. He said, "So that's how we figured it out. I don't hear any more about Air Force stuff." Anyway. When I was vice president, I flew over 1 million miles on Air Force Two, but I traveled further than that Amtrak over the years. I remember one of the conductors when I was going home. Secret Service is wonderful, and they really are, but they'd rather you not travel Amtrak, because not Amtrak, rail, because it has to stop so damn many times, and there's so many options for people to do things that they don't want to have done. So, but I was coming home to see my mom, and I just, she was living with us at the time. My dad had passed away. And I got in a train on a Friday, and I won't get him into complete trouble, just tell his first name. He was number 2 in seniority at the time, Angelo. And Ange came up to me as I walked in, he said, "Joey," and he grabbed my cheek. He said, "Joey, baby." And he said, "All this stuff," because that's published in the newspaper that I had traveled 1,200,000 miles on Air Force planes as vice president. They published that on a regular basis. He said, "Big," I won't quote him exactly, but he said, "Big deal, Joey." And I said, "What's it mean, Ange?" He said, "Look," he said, "we just had the retirement dinner up in Newark." He said, "You know how many miles you traveled on Amtrak?" And I said, "No." He said, 1,000,000, I think it was 320,000 miles. And I said, "How'd you figure that?" He said, "Well, 118 days a year, almost 300 miles a day, 36 years, plus his vice," and he went on the whole deal. And I said, "I believe you, Ange. Let me get in the train, will you?" But the point is, Tommy and I particularly spent a lot of time on the train.